It looks like Bethesda is teasing something pretty big on the way to Fallout 76. It almost looks like following yesterday's maintenance to Fallout 76 that was reportedly for stability reasons, a few interesting items were added to the game world, that being these reddish cases. They look pretty similar to stash boxes or the Overseer stash that you can find around the game world, and they contain something pretty interesting. Although before we fully jump into that, I'm going to structure this video in going from kind of the least amount of spoilers to very spoilery, starting off with some of the stuff you could find in game now, then moving on to some of the stuff that has been data mined that seemingly Bethesda almost wanted us to find, but then moving on to the other stuff that looks like it's pretty indicative of what future DLC is going to be. I'll give you warnings before each of these stages so you can click off if you don't want to continue, but firstly let's look at what you could actually find in game right now. And a huge shout out to a Discord user by the name of Golem814. He PM'd me the location of this crate and holotape at 10 p.m. last night, which is way before anyone else was really talking about it. Either way, in-game, right outside of Morgantown, you could find this mysterious box that is now ominously placed, and within that you will find Automated Record 1. After listening to that holotape, you will hear this.
Doesn't matter. Where was the other one again? Okay, tower, river, fork.
Obviously from that you hear somebody getting out of a crate of some kind. It doesn't seem like it's actually this crate, but probably a different crate. But even further, he says where are the other ones and says tower, river, fork. We don't really know what he's referring to here, what the other ones are, but we do know that what he's saying there, Tower, River, Fork, is in reference to other locations. The next one, which I first saw found by Final Render, so credit to him, he's another YouTuber, is right next to a relay tower, hence the tower in the naming. There you're going to find another mysterious box and get the second holotape.
The hike from Morgantown was short, but it taught me all I needed to know. This part of the world is over. Might as well be the entire world from the looks of it. It makes my mission easier and simpler now. I swear on every soul I took, that I'm gonna unplug that goddamn bucket of bolts. Tin Man mentioned Reclamation Day. I have to find them. I have to go north.
This one's a lot more interesting, it's a lot more telling. You hear the experience of somebody seeing this devastation in the world. Even further, he references a bucket of bolts. Could that be in reference to a robot you find here? That seems the most obvious connection. And he also mentions going north, which is where Vault 76 is relative to this holotape's location. But of course, this also leaves you with a lot of questions. One, who is this dude? Who's the bucket of bolts? And even more importantly, who's Tin Man? At this point, we're going to have really minor spoilers. I wouldn't even really consider these to be truly spoilers. But either way, through data mining, the logs of these holotapes, like the transcript of what's being said, has been known for quite a while now. And from that, we also know that these are actually in reference to Babylon, at least in the files of Fallout 76. As you traverse the files of Fallout 76, Babylon's going to be in reference to nuclear winter, or at least all the things associated with that naming have to do with the next major DLC wave, which is nuclear winter. So what I think is going on here is Bethesda starting a bit of a tease. You find these first two holotapes, and seemingly there will be two more at the river and the fork. As of right now, nobody has found them, and again, minor spoilers, based off data mining, it doesn't look like those are likely in the game yet, but I would imagine with one of the future updates, they'll probably add them in, and this whole thing will ultimately lead to a big tease or introduction into the nuclear winter DLC, whatever that ends up being. I'm personally speculating that they're actually going to build this tease up to their E3 conference and then reveal nuclear winter at E3. I wouldn't expect a ton in the way of details leading up to E3 because that's like their big stage. They probably want to save the juicy stuff for there and not give it away beforehand. Their E3 conference is 1 month from now, and that's actually where I'm going to stop with this one. If you don't want spoilers from the dark world of data mining, you should probably stop watching this video now, but if you do want to hear some minor spoilers from data mining and even potentially a message that Bethesda might have left for people that actually go through and read the data mines, then keep watching. Naturally, data mining is actually a pretty big part of the Fallout 76 community these days. I personally really love it because I love speculating and talking about future content, and I'm pretty confident Bethesda is aware that there's an avid fan base around it and people that will decrypt every single update as it goes live. Well, with that in mind, with the most recent Fallout 76 update, that being patch 9, we got a ton of new information around the next DLC, that being Nuclear Winter. And we know this based off the file namings again. Anything named Babylon is seemingly in reference to Nuclear Winter. You can find things along the lines of notes, holotapes, but one terminal entry that is pretty interesting. Now, it's not clear if Bethesda actually wanted us to find this, but you can find this damaged file that will seemingly be in a terminal. There's a Reddit post around this trying to fill in some of the blanks, and right now what is widely accepted as the unredacted version or the unscrambled version is actually about Vault 51, saying that Vault 51, located in the northern quadrant of Appalachia, the lack of a redacted will test the limits of human tribalism directed by a prototype variant of the redacted experimental redacted. So now, of course, that could be wrong. It is filling in some of the blanks and just doing guesswork, but it does seem to make a fair bit of sense. This would confirm that Vault 51 has to do with the Nuclear Winter DLC, and also that there was some kind of experiment going on there, something to do with human tribalism potentially. So now this is going to be your next spoiler warning. Through further data mining, I can mostly fill in these blanks and actually explain to you some of the story around Vault 51, as it seems like the unredacted version of this could be Vault 51 located in the northern quadrant of Appalachia. The lack of an overseer will test the limits of human tribalism, directed by a prototype variant of the Zax experimental supercomputer. So again, all credit around this goes to the Reddit thread and the posters that did contribute, although from some data mining I did myself, all of that actually makes sense. And even if that isn't what the fill in the blanks are, it still is true. In effect, Vault 51, that vault that was mysteriously added into the top left corner of the map, is actually being ran by a supercomputer known as Zax, this seemingly being one of the experimental versions of him. And this is pretty much all confirmed. I know almost 100% that Zax is in Vault 51 and Vault 51 is relevant here, but I'll explore more of that as we get deeper into the spoilery part of this video. You can think of Zax as kind of comparable to Modus. It was a supercomputer developed by Vault-Tec. It was an extremely advanced AI that could learn itself and actually did become self-aware, and it was used to actually either defend West-Tec or installed in some of the vaults to kind of run the vault, and that's the case as it appears in Appalachia. Zax is the supercomputer that we do find in Vault 51, and he kind of has control of the entire vault. Again, pretty similar to Modus, although it looks like Modus is not nearly as advanced or capable as Zax is. And also, this might be one of the things Modus was communicating to. In Fallout 76's lore, you know, Modus was communicating with some outside source, but then, as there was a rebellion within the bunker, they cut off this external communication, but as you actually enter into the Enclave bunker, you restore his external communication. So maybe he was going back and forth with Zax during this time, and we'll get more details around that. And yeah, that's probably the next spoiler warning. It gives you a pretty good idea of what's going on in the vault, although most of this data mine was through terminal entries or actual notes in the game, but with the most recent update to Fallout 76, there was also a plethora of voice files added in. Voice files of Zax himself as he inhabits the vault, and as you might learn if you continue watching, outside of the vault.
Playing audio log.
But also of several of the residents that do inhabit the vault. So for this one, full credit to Gears the Cool. He was the first one to actually make a Reddit post around data mining these files, then PM me the post. And in effect, in your Fallout 76 installation right now are certain voice files. Using a third-party program, you can extract them and convert them to a listenable format. And that's effectively what he did, although a lot of people are calling into question the legitimacy of this, because here, for example, is just one Zax voice file.
Based on data collected thus far, your victory in this test is assured.
It doesn't really sound that genuine, like it could be faked. So to confirm this, I actually went through the process myself, and yes, all of these are genuine. And even further, you could get the voice files of all the other characters that do inhabit this vault. I think the reason the Zax voice file actually sounds kind of odd or jarring is there's not a filter over it yet. There'll probably be a robotic voice filter when it's actually in game. But yeah, there were a lot of voice files here. So hey, if you wanted an excuse to like the video, I had to listen to over 400 files and it took a while. so a like is appreciated. But in effect, what it seems like went on here was a bunch of people were somehow in Vault 51. It seems like some of these guys might have just stumbled in after the bombs dropped. It's not totally clear how they got inducted, but once in Vault 51, there was kind of a no weapons rule, and there also, at least at one point, wasn't an overseer. Some people argued that they should actually vote for an overseer, and this might have happened at one point, but from one of the audio files, we can tell Zax wasn't okay with this over the long term. He realized that everyone just kind of voted for themselves and no majority was ever found.
That is unacceptable. Zax has determined that voting is pointless, and another method will be used to select a leader.
So he wanted an alternate means to actually select an overseer. And spoilers here for what exactly the Vault 51 experiment was, although it is relevant to the rest of this video, the means by which he went through this process was actually slowly turning all of the people in the vault against each other and then actually giving some of them guns. And in the end, it seems like almost a survival of the fittest. He took in a bunch of candidates, gave them weapons, and then through multiple rounds of this, tried to find out who was actually the best equipped. It seems like that was the initial story of Vault 51. Some people got inducted into the vault, got weapons, and then fought each other. Over the course of this, Zax was learning. He was trying to figure out what was the best way to pick an overseer and actually examining data around the different candidates. But also coming with the Nuclear Winter DLC, we know there is the Nuclear Winter game mode, whatever that ends up being. Through all of these audio files for Zax, there's actually kind of 3 separate groups, I would say. Some of them are him talking to the actual inhabitants of the vault. We could find back and forths between one person that's living there and then Zax responding with something else.
Wait, Zax, what was that? He was where? With who?
Your cooperation is appreciated. Good night, candidate Clayton Ward.
Other times, it seems like he's actually talking to us as we are in the vault, maybe when we discover it in-game.
A nuclear briefcase, once the burden of your leaders, now available to all.
But then what is ending up probably to be the most interesting of the voice lines, we also have certain voice lines of him almost narrating or commentating over top this new game mode.
This was a predicted outcome. But you did last longer than expected.
Which ties directly back into the original purpose of the vault, of actually finding a survival of the fittest and seeing what the best candidate was. So there's some pretty basic stuff like a battle to the death commencing or a match beginning.
A battle to the death is the only sure way to judge the superior candidate. You were victorious in the last test. Will you survive yet again?
That the overseer is picked by successfully winning through the competition, although through other voice lines, it doesn't seem like if you win once, that's good enough, like you're going to need to win many, many times.
You are victorious. But still, many rounds remain before you will be overseer.
And I would speculate in-game, obviously, no actual overseer is picked because that wouldn't really make sense in how Fallout 76 works. And it seems like there's some kind of mode that's going to be based around survival and competing against other people that are also trying to survive and also trying to fight to become overseer. The part where it gets interesting is some of the voice lines refer to things going on inside the vault, like no enemies are left in these rooms.
Affirmative. This room is safe. All candidates in this room are deceased.
But other ones actually reference that if you're successful here, you can return to the vault, making it seem like that there might be some game modes taking place inside of Vault 51 and other ones that take place on the outside.
A successful candidate returns to the vault. I look forward to your future here.
There's many references to there only being a few candidates remaining, like many of them have been taken out.
There are few of you left. This is merely data, but I see your heart rate spike.
Or alternatively, which is, I think, some of the most damning evidence, some kind of closing ring effect.
You are not in the safe area of the storm. Soon you will die in a nuclear flame. Candidate, you are outside of the storm's safe area. Candidate, this area will be engulfed in flames soon. Prepare to move to safety. Candidate, calculations show that this area will be destroyed soon. Consider moving Your survival is predicated on your ability to move to the storm's safe area.
Through the voice files, it's mostly referred to as almost a firestorm, but you'd hear many references of him saying like, hey, you have to move because the position you're in presently will no longer be viable. I'm only showing you a few of these examples, but pretty much for everything I'm mentioning, there were like 5 to 10 at least voice lines, sometimes even more. There's also references to only 2 people being left and almost a final battle occurring.
The final battle. Now we will see who truly possesses the superior genes. One of you will return to the vault alive. The other as a bit of data.
But getting back to that idea of there being different modes, there's also the reference to squads in the combat.
Victory as a group. This is allowed. But remember, only one can be overseer. Through teamwork, an individual becomes stronger. But do not let it be a crutch. Data shows that allowing groups quickens the elimination of inferior candidates. Excellent work, candidates. Your elimination of the other teams was quite efficient.
There's many voice lines referring to the fact that you could have certain teammates, although he does refer to these as squads and only a few of you, so it doesn't seem like it's super wide scale, but alternatively fighting against other squads or even wiping out all of the remainder of a certain squad, or at least partially that squad. Although one that I found particularly interesting, and there was literally only like one voice line for this, which was peculiar. For one of these, it almost made it sound like a team deathmatch mode of sorts, like that could be one of the modes available.
Only one side will return to the vault. Statistically, you are evenly matched.
It said only one of the teams will return back to the vault. While in a lot of the other team-based voice lines, it made it sound like it was a small team and you were fighting against several other teams. So taking this all together, it seems like we have a description of something pretty interesting, a PvP-focused mode that is based around the survival of the fittest. It seems like there's going to be some kind of closing ring involved here, that known as the firestorm. Although there's no explicit voice lines for like picking up items or finding guns during the game mode section of this, in the actual lore of the vault, there were no guns and then everyone was given guns by Zax.
Analysis. Provided weaponry was effective in producing results, but in a longer time frame than expected.
And I just know it. Zax has been pitting us against each other this whole time. Thought no one would notice, that it was just some fun and games. Then he started giving these maniacs, guns.
So if you generalize that also to the game mode, it kind of spells out something pretty clear. And that is a battle royale-esque mode, or at the very least a game mode featuring several of the major features of battle royale, such as survival of the fittest, squad versus squad gameplay, and of course actually a closing ring of fire. And I'm expecting that you of course also spawn without weapons. Now this is pretty interesting for a couple of reasons, and I definitely think there can be some doubt around this. In data mining outside of these voice files, which obviously are very circumstantial and can be open to interpretation, that's why I've been showing you many of them or letting you listen to most of them, but looking through the traditional Fallout 76 files, even though we find references to PvP based game modes, none of them actually refer to a battle royale. We can find things for a team deathmatch, a free-for-all, but the word or term battle royale is never used. So some people can take that to mean that this is all just kind of some weird or interesting team deathmatch or free-for-all based mode and not actually battle royale. As being what seems like one of the few people to actually listen through all 330 of Zach's voice lines, I don't think that's the case. Again, I think there's several game modes. I would speculate there's going to be a traditional battle royale kind of solos mode where you just play by yourself against 48 other players, a team-based mode where you're in squads of 4, and then maybe other game modes like a traditional team deathmatch or just a free-for-all mode that doesn't feature things like spawning without items or the closing of the walls around you. Maybe those are some of the game modes that actually take place inside of the vault. Through the voice files, Zax actually references several rounds or competitions. Maybe battle royales like the first one, but then there's other variants of it that are maybe meant to be a bit more difficult that you also have to accomplish. Even further, if this ends up being a battle royale, it seems like it certainly has some twists. Nukes are almost certainly going to play a role in whatever this game mode is.
Candidate, a launch has been detected. If you wish to survive, avoid the blast.
There are many voice lines referencing this. It seems like those nuclear briefcases that we actually saw through one of the perk card data mines and also just through general data mines are going to be how you actually launch the nukes in this, rather than having those silo codes that we do in adventure mode.
A nuclear briefcase. The first steps to an overwhelming show of force.
And beyond all that, it also seems like there's going to be one of those systems similar to the Enclave bunker in Fallout 76, where as you progress, you're going to gradually earn access to additional parts of Vault 51.
You will find your access in the vault grow with your success in testing. Sorry, Overseer. You will need higher Overseer rank to access that terminal. Have a nice day.
You would have to imagine this couldn't be dependent on winning Battle Royale mode, because that's not the easiest thing to do. If you're not good at PvP, you don't want to lock users out of additional PvE-based content. But either way, I think this is pretty interesting. I know a lot of people will immediately write this off or think it sounds dumb, but I think it could be kind of cool. A slower paced battle royale mode that has genuine survival elements could be really interesting. And even further, the fact that we are potentially getting other PvP based modes also could be fun, even if you don't like battle royale. One big question I would have is if there's any tangible rewards or benefits from these modes that would be carried over into the more traditional adventure mode. I think that would make it a lot more appealing, but also could turn people off or anger a subset of the community. Yeah, there's a lot to uncover here. I encourage you guys to listen through some of these if you want to. Again, it'll take a while. It took me a couple of hours to get through all of them. Although after learning all of this or hearing everything I just said, is one final spoiler. I think it also allows me to kind of figure out those mysterious holotapes I showed you at the start of the video. There is this mysterious character that is trying to go to 4 separate locations. The location it starts at and then Tower River Fork. In this, he mentions a bucket of bolts that he is trying to destroy and how he's angry because of all of the souls it took, but then also all of the souls he had to take in the process. So what I think is going on here is it's somebody that survived the battle royale and actually won the battle royale thanks to Zax. He wants to destroy Zax, and what he's trying to use are those nuclear briefcases. 4 of those are required to actually launch a nuke, and that would explain the 4 locations he's going to look for them. Either way, I know all of this is a lot to take in. I know people have very strong opinions on it. Either way, I think it's pretty exciting. I'm curious to see what they do next with this game. It certainly would be an interesting direction. But with that, I thank you all for watching again. Hopefully you enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.